Welcome to the Social for Brokers podcast. Now, as part of Marketing March, I have with me the one and only Alex Curtis from the Lead Engine. Now, if you're in the mortgage space, you're probably very familiar with Alex, but in a recap, what he does at the Lead Engine is helps mortgage advisors generate leads through their website. So I thought, what better person to speak to about how mortgage advisors that listen to this can start generating leads. So we're going to talk through a few areas, including, I don't want to call it the dark art of SEO, but I think there's a lot of myths around SEO. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the industry that are trying to pull people wool over their eyes with SEO. So I've got Alex here, and he's done a fantastic episode on his podcast about SEO and just really simplifying it for everybody, which is really good. So Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, mate. Thanks for having me. It's very organised to sort of plan out what you know when you're going to publish your episodes and doing a whole Marketing March thing. I'm very impressed.
Well, this is the first episode in 100 episodes that we've ddone that. So it sounds good, but it's the first time we've ever done it.
Nice. What was that about pulling wool over people's eyes?
Well, we'll edit that bit out. And yeah. I did mean to say there, when pulling wool over their eyes, the Lead Engine, they do not do that. I just want to get that clear before we start, because we'll get into SEO, but I think you're in agreement with me that it can be a very tricky subject, can't it?
Yes, and I think what would be good actually to explain, there's this whole thing that SEO takes time, and actually just understanding some of the real basic fundamentals of why one website you could publish a page and it'd be position one, page one tomorrow, and another one it would never get there, and the differences probably between there, and when you kind of understand that, and it is fairly simple logic as well. There is no, and so I think if people know that and know whether it is worth investing in it at this point or whether actually doing something about it, I think that would be really useful for people to know.
Yeah, we'll get into that. And I've got a few questions that I'm hoping I'm going to pry some of that information from you. Okay. So before we get into the nitty gritty, could you give us a bit of a background as to how you started in the industry and how the Lead Engine started?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I went to uni and thinking that I was going to be the next Christopher Nolan. He was like my hero film. I'm a massive film geek, and that's where all the Batman stuff comes from. Oh, you can't
the Batman chair.
The Batman chair. And like Batman notepads and pencil cases and everything like that.
Oh, that is an old school pencil case.
That is an old school indeed. I've got the matching notepad for it, but everything Batman comes from my love of Christopher Nolan and being a total film geek. So I went there doing that, and then kind of realised that if you want to get into the film industry, you're going to be running coffee around for people in London for like minimum wage. My cat has joined us, by the way, and didn't want to do that. But in your first year of uni, you pretty much do all sorts of different.
We see the cat popping up. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see that there was two ginger ears that popped up on the
absolutely ignores me all day, and then when I want to exactly, that's the thing with cats. So you do all these sort of different things, especially in your first year. Like we did one module on like wiring a plug. It's like, what's that got to do with anything? Okay. But we did things in Photoshop, like designing posters and DVD covers, and we did a course on like coding websites. So I kind of got into that, and we were at that point, it was like coding a website in like Notepad, like literally raw
old school HTML and CSS.
And exactly. And then I was like, that kind of interested me. So I started working, got a part-time job at an agency while I was there. I've never been so rich, actually, when I was at uni, because I worked in the Argos call centre. I had this other job, and then my mum was paying my rent, and I was like loaded. I would have scrambled egg and smoked salmon for lunch when I was a student. So I was doing that, and then when I finished uni, I got another job sort of locally at an agency, and it was in that sort of digital marketing world. One of our clients was a company called The Money Shop. So they were a payday loan lender, which is a bit sort of murky version of the kind of financial services, but they launched a online pawnbroker. And that was like a big digital project that involved kind of the FCA, although they were called something else at the time. So this was like 2008 sort of time. Just having that experience in financial services would open up more roles in it. So when I went in sort of 2013, 14, went on my own, it was at that point just that I'd dealt with compliance that got me some work. So I think where things got interesting for me and where the lead engine sort of came about is one of my early clients was a local company in Peterborough. They had loads, basically had massive budget, loads of money, big call center of advisors. And I would go in, at that point, it was just me. I was contracting and I would go into the offices and help people with their marketing and things. They were spending a lot of money. They had this beautiful looking website. So it's like no expense spared on how things look. A very nice looking, beautiful website, spending lots of money. And basically the issue was like lead quality. So they would get some leads, but it wasn't profitable. So I spent some time inside the business and always kind of learned that you learn most actually just listening to salespeople, listening to sales conversations. And so I was working with like the trainer in the call center there, and we were listening to the calls coming in. You'd have like the referral calls coming in, really warm, really friendly. They would convert very high percentage of those, as most advisors do. And then you'd hear the web leads and it was like chalk and cheese. And both people needed advice just as much as the other. So in terms of quality, it wasn't that was a poor person. It was just that person wasn't bought in as much. So basically what we did is just spent a bit of time is like working out why were the referrals so good and deconstructing that. And then we changed the website based on what we found, and then that worked. And then those web leads coming in were much warmer, much better quality because they were open to the conversation. But ultimately they were kind of like things that, I mean, it's really simple, but it's like whenever the referrals came in, they always asked for an advisor. So they didn't care who the company was. Like no one mentioned the company. They always said, like, oh, I need to speak to Bob, or I need to speak to Mary. My friend Julie said, oh, I need to speak to Chris or whatever.
Right, I see what you mean.
So the reason that they had called is they successfully heard that their friend, someone else, has successfully worked with them and it was good. So that was the reason why they called. A lot of them, they all had a specific situation though. So their friend had something similar, like, you know, with mortgages, financial advice, you know, it's never cookie cutter, is it? Everyone's got their own situations. They all sort of rang and was like, I'm not sure if you can help me, but, you know, Joe said, speak to Dave or whatever. It's all very specific situation. They were all, you could feel them relax into the call when they heard that the advisor wasn't going to sell something straight away, that they were listening, that they were advising. So we basically pulled all these things together and we're like, right, so how can we replicate this? And so we didn't spend any more money. We didn't change who we were getting our ads in front of and things like that. We just changed what was on the website. We made the advisors the main focus because we knew that nobody cared who the company was. It was, they trusted a person. And then we featured the reviews because we knew that it was really important to people that they'd been successful, like someone else has been successfully helped. And we knew that we couldn't just send people to the homepage and just talk broadly about a mortgage or about whatever. We've got to give like specific examples, like self-employed mortgages or whatever. Everyone had a specific problem. We combined it all together. And then we more than halved the cost to acquire a client. We were getting more leads for it. So we weren't spending any more money. We were just convincing more people that we're worth speaking to. And then the advisor would do the rest of the job. So it's just a process. So I know we're going to talk about SEO today. No point in getting more free traffic if that's not going to convert into leads. So I'd learned all the technical SEO stuff for about a decade and ads and things like that. But it wasn't until probably 2014 that I understood actually what made
a good client, a good lead.
What is in terms of a good lead, because the quality is in the sort of, they've got to think you're good quality as well as you thinking they're good quality for the conversation to happen. If that makes sense.
It's really interesting you were talking there when you were talking about you were helping somebody with their website, but instead of delving into the website for that whole day when you were deconstructing the calls, you never actually looked at the website. You looked at what the clients were saying, found out what. That's really interesting because when we speak to people about social media, the best social media content is answering the questions that people are asking you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, certainly.
So ignore you could have gone down all the bells and whistles. You could have changed the cost per click. You know what I mean? You could have improved that. You could have done this. But actually go back to basics and go, what do my clients actually want to hear from me? And I suppose that can be used across your website, across social, across your print adverts. Exactly. It's really interesting that, although you specialize in the websites, you took a step back and looked at the clients.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So that was 2013. Now we're in 2023. So what, your business has been going like 10 years now?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Huge. So I think we turned into a limited company in 2017, but I sort of left my last agency job, and went sort of self-employed at that 2013-14 mark. So technically, still the same thing. I used to work with all sorts of, like, I did a lot in like sports products and things back in the day. So it wasn't really, that's until the lead engine was like, initially sort of set up, that it was like, we only do financial services now. That's the thing we want to.
That's what you're focusing on. Yeah. And that was going to be my next question. How do you help mortgage advisors now? What do you do for them?
Well, I think you summed it up brilliantly earlier. It was like, well, it's replicating that process for it's your website can. So a lot of people will, buying leads is easy, and you feel safer because I'll get a lead for X pounds. And then, whereas when you're marketing, you could spend X pounds and not get any leads. So I think it's everyone's second choice, unless they've got a real issue with lead buyers, or they've been burned before. It's kind of, because it's a bit more unknown. It's way more profitable doing it yourself, but it's like, we fear the unknown, don't we? So I think a lot of people don't know what. I mean, I speak to some people and they're like, I don't believe that people search online for mortgage advice and actually inquire. And it's like, I take it for granted that they do. I think
we have to get out of our own way sometimes. In my head, I'm sometimes thinking, nobody would do that. But then actually,
because I don't. Yeah, exactly. But it's like, we're all very different. So it's like so the thing that drives me really is like, I've seen the other side of it. I've had lead sellers wanting me to help them set up like a website that is like a fake government brand. So it's just horrific. Because it's
so bad. And that's why leads, you question, and a lot of mortgage advisors are doing that now, are questioning the quality of these leads.
Yeah.
Because if they do come through a dodgy, in inverted commas, government website, what is going to be the quality of that lead? And you've paid 60 quid for a lead that's a load of rubbish.
Fined for it now as well. With the whole consumer duty, you need to show that even if you're buying leads now, the lead seller needs to demonstrate every step of that journey for you to, because you're now part of that journey, whether you're designing the bit at the beginning anyway. So and it's just like, why? I mean, just the thought of, I always think the thought of my mum, she's 74. If she was searching for equity release, found like a dodgy calculator that took like sort of tricked her into putting the details in, and then they sell those details to multiple advisors, and then her phone's getting hammered, and she's like then panicking, and then actually sort of clams up and doesn't want to do anything at all. I think that's horrific.
It's not the right way to deal with it.
It's not the right. It's no good for anyone. It's no good for the people that spent money buying the lead. It's no good for people like my mum. Whereas there's an easy way to do it. Like,
just promote your own company, and that's what we're going to speak about today. How to do that on the website. Be interesting to speak to you about the consumer duty and see how that will affect. Will it affect the way that you help people? Will you have to be more inclined with the compliance point of view?
No, because we're very, for us personally, it's a very transparent, it's very clear. We do everything via our clients' websites and always have done. So you search for mortgage broker near me, you see our clients' ad to their website from their ad account. That is there, that ad has been approved by their compliance, and that goes to their website that we have built with them, that features them and their advisors. We interview the advisors on, you talked about the Q&A thing earlier, you talked about answering questions. This integrates your SEO and social media together. It's like you find the frequently Googled questions on specific topics. That's what people want to know. ask the advisors give the answers, and we record it in a podcast like this, so that when someone clicks on that ad, they can get to know an advisor, because, as we, back in 2013, 14, that was the most important reason why people rang. So they get to know the advisor, because they don't care what the company's called. Okay, who they're going to speak to, that they're a nice person, that they want to help them. Everything's completely transparent, and that gets cheaper leads, it gets better quality leads, and it's just very transparent. So the only difference we've got to do is give more screenshots. In fact, we don't, because everything gets compliant signed off anyway. So for us, in terms of a process point of view, this is great, because this is what we want. It's a transparent.
We want everything transparent. And I was going to say, you were talking about the podcast episode, because we've dealt with quite a few clients that have dealt with you guys, like Rebus, for example.
Yeah.
They have on their website a little podcast episode. And I think it's great, because again, we take it for granted that we are nice people. And as a mortgage broker, somebody shouldn't feel worried to pick up the phone to you.
Yeah.
But they do. I liken it to, say, if you just started driving and you're going to the mechanics for the first time to get an MOT.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You are. I remember I taking my white Metro in that cost me 625 quid, and I was crapping myself because I thought they're going to rip me off here. Yet, if there was a social channel or a website that had a little video of John, who owned the garage, and was just talking about, I'd get to hear his voice, I might get to see who he is, and I might learn a bit about a football team that he supports. I'd much rather likely to use John at that mechanics than I would at Bob down the road. And exactly. This is where it is really useful. We've got to, again, get out of our own way to say, we actually do need to tell people who we are and what we do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just assuming that they're going to pick the phone up to us because we think we're a nice company to deal with.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Same thing like tradespeople, builders. If they've got you've got a tradesperson with a YouTube channel that shows you how to put your fence up in your garden, and that he's not putting any sort of sales pitch on that. It's like, this is if you want it, and then be like that. And if he's locally, that's the person that I would want to put the fence up in my garden. So I kind of know what he's like. We fear the unknown, and a lot of people, if they've not been referred, it's because their friend's not used a broker and they haven't used a broker. That's why they're searching. So you are on the back foot. You've got to prove yourself. You've got to prove that you're a decent human and that you're not like a sleazy car salesman.
And they're much more likely. It can happen, yeah,
exactly.
And you can then charge, I'm not going to get into the fee debate, but if you are charging fees, could you charge more because they trust you compared to somebody else that there might be a fee-free broker and there might be a charging broker. If they trust you and you're a charging broker, they're probably more likely to use you than the fee-free one because you've added value to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think is we don't buy things based on the price. Otherwise, we'd all drive the cheapest car around, wouldn't we? So it's never. We don't see like obviously there people do search for fee-free brokers, and fee-free brokers that advertise for that search perform better than fee charging ones. In terms of a lead generation point of view, we don't see the fees as a block to getting leads.
Different clients.
Yeah, we've got fee-free brokers. We've got ones that charge a fee, charge a decent fee, and it's not which in terms of the most important factors of the amount of leads, the quality, the cost. I wouldn't even put fee price in the top 5 factors.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, because
we've got off on a bit of a tangent there. But...
Maybe, but I suppose it is. That's me, mate. When you say, we only need half an hour. I would say unless there's a big change and the FCA say you have to prominently put your fees in massive bold writing at the top, and everyone's got that, and people then compare 3 websites, then I think it may become a factor. But because we're putting our fees in the footer, and we don't have to put a massive badge at the top, then you could imagine if you're looking at 3 websites and there's a big badge, our fees are this, then that would might
make a difference.
People think about it more. But at the moment, I don't see it as a huge one. But it obviously depends what they're searching for.
We'll see what happens in the future. Right, let's get on to SEO, because this is something that I really want to speak about, and I know a lot of people are listening in for that specific reason. So SEO, can you give us a quick 60 seconds into what SEO is for anybody that hasn't come across the term before?
Yes, I mean, basically what it is you're optimizing your website. Your website is SEO essentially. To if someone searches for something, that you've got a better chance of being at the top of on Google or Bing or any other search engine. You know, that's kind of what it is.
So when people search it in, you've got the adverts at the top, and then we're talking about the response. So if you typed in mortgage advisor name, they were talking about the ones beneath the Google My Businesses.
You've got there's a slight thing there. So you've got like local SEO, because when someone searches like a mortgage broker or mortgage advisor, Google Maps comes up and actually shows a local result. There are some searches that Google deems as a local service, and some, like remortgaging, Google deems as a national service. So there's like national results. And there are other searches where there's local, but it's all SEO. It's all a search engine. You're still trying to get, SEO is essentially trying to get higher, getting more free traffic, because it doesn't cost anything for the click itself. It costs you time or money to do these things.
Get there. Okay, so leading into that, perfect lead into, what are 3 things that somebody could do to their website today for free that would help them with SEO? And this isn't black or white. This isn't going to make you jump to page 1, but it will help the SEO. What would you recommend?
So I think for mortgage advisors, your Google reviews, because Google Maps comes up, Google reviews is something you can do that's totally free. It's not technical. You don't have to change your website. It's Google wants to show 3 local firms on Google Maps when someone searches for a mortgage broker. The person with the most reviews in that location wins. So that would be the thing. I think we might need to kind of cover, like, because there is some people that could make some changes, and they could go to page 1 tomorrow, and there's some people could follow all the advice and not move at all. So I don't know whether we should cover kind of that off.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about that,
because I think that's where the confusion comes in. And then maybe the three things that you need to get on page 1 are not necessarily changes to your website. So like the Google algorithm's got ridiculous amounts of things that it looks for. But at the end of the day, they won the war of the search engines against Ask Jeeves and Alta Vista and everyone that set up at that time. They weren't the first search engine. It wasn't like they were the first one to come out and we all used it. It's because Alta Vista, you would search for taxis and you get pizza companies. It wasn't good. It wasn't a good search
really?
engine. Yeah. So it was like Google gave the best result. So for them, that is their job. They make all the ad revenue because we use Google because it always gives us a good response. So they will always want to do that. What they're looking for is the page, not the website. They're looking for a page with the best answer to the query. So if I'm searching, what documents do I need for a self-employed mortgage? They're looking for the best page, not necessarily the best website, from a reliable source. So this is kind of where your domain comes in, and your website is tied into it. So the reliable source element this is the thing that takes time, because so a friend of ours, mine and Tom's in the business, works for a government website, and a proper one, not a fake one, a proper one.
Disclaimer.
They are a reliable source. So they've got this thing called domain authority. Whereas he was chatting to us the other day. He's like, I'll put a calculator live and it's position 1 on Google the next day, because they've got this thing authority. So they are a reliable source, and not just because they're government. It doesn't necessarily need to be a government source. That domain has authority. So when Google's kind of looking for the best page, it's the reliable source thing that can have a big impact.
Right.
So the Google says domain authority isn't a thing. But we just know from experience that it is. So there are some tools that you can use to check your domain's authority. So if you just Google domain authority checker, I think there's one called Website SEO Checker. We'll give the link.
Yes, that'd be fun.
They give you a score out of 100, which we find quite accurate. So if you've got a brand new company, brand new website, brand new domain, you'll have domain authority of 0. Okay, so you could have an amazingly coded website, brilliantly. You could have spent a fortune on an amazing SEO person to make the perfectly coded website, and then get the best SEO writer to write the best SEO article for a specific search. So you've done all the right things in your control, but then you published it and it's nowhere on Google because you haven't got the authority. Okay.
Because there's no trust for that website, because it's only been around for a few days.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly. So if you were in Google's position, why would you trust a brand new website? You've got to earn the right?
Yep.
So I think when you understand that, and you can understand that you can build authority over the time, with things like PR. So it used to be, when Google originally launched, it used to be how many links you have from other websites. Okay, so, and then what people did, they would cheat, is they would buy a load of domains and link back to their website, and then that's why they were top. In fact, we interviewed a guy who was top for life insurance quotes organically because they cheated the algorithm. The algorithm changed, and then they dropped off. So, so basically, what we've always taken this approach is don't try and cheat, because you might win for 5 minutes, but then this guy was selling his business and it wipes off millions of valuation on his business. Basically, the sale fell through. So I suppose the next question, like, how do you build authority, is probably the next question then, isn't it? So it's like a
time is one of them.
Yeah, time, exactly. Yeah, it's like your domain age is like a fine wine. So the longer it's been around. So my advice would be, if you haven't launched your website at the minute and you're sort of launched something, it's like, oh, I'm delaying it because it's not perfect. The quicker you get it indexed by Google, even if it's not perfect in your eyes, no one's going to see it anyway unless you tell them about it.
Very good point. Yeah.
Get it live, get it signed off compliantly, and then tell Google it's there. And then the worst case scenario is it will show for when someone searches for your name. You need to do quite a bit of work for this site to be seen, especially when you've got a zero authority and it's brand new. So your site's never going to be perfect. You should always be building on it and making it more perfect over time. The quicker you get it indexed, the quicker that stopwatch starts for you to build that age and kind of authority. And then we have to experiment, because Google won't tell us. So we have to work these things out. We do know that people with more reviews on Trustpilot and Google reviews seem to have a higher domain authority. That seems to go hand in hand. Also things like PR. So with the, I don't know if you've done an episode with the news page guys, or have you seen?
Yes. Yeah. Jay.
Yeah. So I spoke to a guy who small business, one-man brokerage, really low DA. So we had a sales call and I said, look, it's probably not worth it because the domain authority is so low. You'd be spending a lot of money, take too long, etc. And then he's been featured a lot in the news, and then his domain authority has gone way higher because his brand has been featured. He's been getting some links from high authority sites back to his, building his. So he's becoming a reliable source of information because he's being featured on other websites.
So just to break that down for anybody that doesn't know what's happening there. So Newspage UK, have a listen to the one of the episodes with Jay from Newspage. What they do is they feature you on, say, the Times with a quote. And then what it will be is, if Mike Smith has written this part of the article, he's from Smith's Mortgages, and there'll be a link on the word Smith's Mortgages that will direct people to Smith's Mortgages website. That's how they get that, and that's authority, don't they?
That's what we call a backlink. Yeah. So the authority comes through there. So Google will also, even mentions of the name as well will get cut.
Okay,
even
that's
if it doesn't
interesting.
mix. So there's because people people like me, I've always gone down the route of if we try and treat, there's no point, we'll always get found out. But there are people like me, in terms of that work in this space, that were always trying to hack the algorithm, cheat the algorithm, find the weak spots. So that's why they have those algorithm updates and why that guy fell off a cliff. So Google's looking for natural. So not all of your features are going to have a link. If all of your mentions of your name have a link, that seems unnatural. If it's on loads of, so it's just kind of don't try and force this. People will sell you backlinks and things like that. It's there's no you can't become an overnight success in business in anything unless you win the lottery or whatever. So it's kind of like just being mindful of it. If the more it's worthwhile being featured, if I can, and this could build over time. It's that authority element is when people say SEO takes time. That's the bit that takes time to increase,
to build that authority.
So yeah, don't think, oh, if I go and get featured in the Daily Mail once, my authority will blow
Yeah.
up. It's like
there's no silver bullet, is there? And I think that's to any thinking. People have never built their mortgage brokerage from 1 to 50 advisors overnight. That has taken
time or money. It's one or the other, or both.
And or both. Yeah.
So
we've spoken about Google reviews. We've spoken about the authority. That's really interesting. I've learned a lot there on how that works. I think
your content as well. If you create really good content, you need to create really good, because Google's looking for the specific page that answers the question that someone searches the best. So if you've got the best answer, you're going to build authority over time, because that will get noticed. It will get, people will share it with their friends. If you've got Google Analytics installed on your website, Google knows how long people are reading this page for. So you'll build authority over time by having really good content as well. And it really winds me up when people say, oh, people haven't got time to read content. People don't spend, they bloody well do, like, especially if they need a mortgage. They will do their research. So having that content is really worthwhile.
And I think when we're searching for something in particular, for example, if there was a news article released about Christopher Nolan, you would read that from top to bottom.
Yeah. Well, the amount of time I've spent looking at Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, because it was coming out, is ridiculous.
That's it. Whereas if you've got somebody, say if there's a client sat at home and they really want this dream house, but they are a doctor, they would spend time reading that post about being a doctor and having a mortgage, because ultimately it helps them get their dream house. So
if they're a locum doctor, with doctors, there's so many different, if they're employed, non-employed, everyone is in the default position that they think they can't get a mortgage, and they won't ring you up to find out if they don't just, it's not like, oh, I'll get the yellow pages out and find a broker and I'll ring one. It's like, we will look online to see what's possible. And if you're not a contributor to that, then you're going to be missing out. You are missing out.
I think what happens is, what I've noticed, and this is me running my business as well, is people won't pick up the phone to you and say, I have recently seen your article, or I have recently seen your post, and I'm phoning because that has been the call to action for me to call you. So you don't realize how much effect those blog articles or that page on your website is benefiting you in business, because people won't tell you.
Yeah. And that's, just basic understanding that's where things like Google Analytics comes into play and is really helpful. Just the problem is with these tools is they look so, they're overwhelming when you go in them. But there are just some basic things to look at just to find out what's working.
So install analytics onto the website.
100%,
that helps.
100%.
Even if you're not reading those figures, Google has seen that you've made the forward step of putting it onto their website.
They'll know how long people are reading your content for. And then if you do eventually want to work with someone to help that, they can see the data. They can see what was happening before
in the past.
And then if you do spend money and hire someone, then you can see the improvements. You can, it's data, it's black and white. You can see
what's going on.
Yeah.
Go into the local SEO. So talking about Google My Business. So whenever you search for a mortgage broker, you'll have your top 3 people that come up. Do you speak to people much about, I call it the social media part of Google, where you can upload posts?
Yeah, the posts. Yeah, absolutely.
Does that help?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So a lot of people, especially if you've got a low amount of reviews and you're sort of in the middle of nowhere, and there's not someone completely dominating the market. We do a lot of coaching with people. So we do a lot of people that aren't, I said earlier, there was someone that we couldn't help because they weren't ready. We couldn't help them on the agency side. But because we've got this mission, as we said earlier, that we want to kind of get rid of this dirty lead gen kind of thing where people are selling dodgy leads. The reason we have our podcast and the reason we can't just be selfish and work with the big firms that, so one of the we've got, this industry has been amazing for me, my family, and our our employees and everything, that we've got to give back as well. So we do training for a lot of people. And there's one of our clients has actually got franchisees, and they've sort of got their own business, and we've got a training platform for them. And we push it with them a lot, and they push it with them because they know, and they are constantly on, when we do these little drop-in sessions, they're always saying, oh, you got to do those Google My Business posts, because I keep getting people that you see the views. It's easy because the analytics, I think, because the analytics, like social, the analytics are a bit easier to understand, aren't they? There's less analytical stuff that they can see it. And I think Google My Business is great because it's that snapshot, which I wish Google Analytics had.
Yes, like a simplified version.
I've been visible this amount of time. I've had this many clicks. I've had this many phone calls and stuff. So yeah, very long answer to the question. I should have said yes.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's interesting because we speak to our clients about it. And if you've ever seen it, if search social for brokers in Google, and you'll see My Business on the right-hand side. And if you scroll down at the bottom, there's like a carousel of photos. And I call it like the Google social media platform. And not many people know about it. But what happens is if you upload posts to that, Google see you as practicing what they want you to be doing. So it's almost like Google give you a bit of a tick, and it helps. It won't shoot you to the top, but it does help your ranking, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the way I see those is like, you're not necessarily sending signals out to clients. It's you're sending a signal out to Google. I've got Google My Business, which is connected to my location, to my business. It's the one way you can tell Google you're still open for business. Because when your business is closed, and no one's going to be like, oh, my business is closed, I'll just make sure I'll deactivate my Google My Business profile. Nobody does. So those are dormant accounts. It's one way to say that this is, we're still trading because we're still posting. It's the only way. So yeah, that signal to Google is definitely a really good way of saying.
So Google My Business. Sorry.
Now, I was going to say, if you're creating social posts with you, or you're doing them yourselves or whatever, then just use those. You don't have to create new content to
use something like Buffer, because Buffer has the capability now where you can post static visuals to Google My Business, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can't post videos to Google My Business from Buffer. But get a Buffer account, guys. If you're not using us, it's free. You can post up to 3 accounts, 10 posts for free. Go and post them to Google My Business. It's a huge help. So we talked Google My Business. We've talked about domain authority. Is there anything else that people can do with their website or their domain that can help at the moment?
Yeah, so the kind of the three main things to rank are the code, the content, of the authority, and the authority we've talked a lot about. So content is where I think people just do the minimum. Like, I mean, you look at so many, and you do need that. You need it for Google, but you also need it for humans as well, because we said earlier they want to do their research. Yeah, it's really simple. Like, if you want to work with subprime, bad credit, do a search for Google bad credit mortgages. It says on there, people also search for this, and there's a load of questions. And then click on the arrow down, it'll give you more questions. It's like, this is what people want to know.
It's called people also ask, isn't it?
Yeah, people also ask. Yeah, exactly. That's what people want to know. So you can use software. I mean, we've got software. We've got like the volume of searches and the difficulty to rank. But if you're just doing this yourself and you just want to get the ball rolling, then that's they've ordered it in what's most popular.
Frequency.
Yeah. So just make sure, even if it's I think the thing is, you've got to answer the questions, even though it's a no. So the one is like, people still search, are self-cert mortgages still available? Even if you don't want to attract those sort of people, even if the answer is like a flat no, people are still searching for that. So if you're creating a self-employed mortgage page and you don't answer that question, it's not the best page on the internet for self-employed mortgages, because you're not.
And I can just see one page. Are self-cert mortgages still available? No. Just start again.
I bet you can say, no, this is why. They're self-employed. They're looking for mortgage. You may need to get yourself ready. But you need to know this. Is if you want to have a quick chat, and we can just see where you are, because you could do some stuff with your accountant now, not to minimize. There's the video there. There's a whole thing there. Yes, it's not going to give you a lead tomorrow, but by covering everything off in that area of self-employed mortgages, you'll never rank if you don't.
You've got to answer those questions as a human, like
Yeah, yeah,
exactly like Alex said then. Yeah, self-certain mortgages aren't available, but speak to your
yeah,
accountant. The one thing you don't want to do, and I'm no SEO specialist, but do what they call the old keyword stuffing, where you're
yeah,
almost putting
yeah,
words in. You're just putting in bad credit mortgages aren't very good. Bad credit mortgage, and you're filling it with keywords
yeah,
because it, like Alex said, we respond to it as you would.
yeah.
Don't do what they call keyword stuffing because it's an old illegal technique almost, isn't it?
Illegal.
Not illegal,
But yeah,
sorry,
no,
but
you're right. Yeah, but no, I love. But it should be. It should be. Yeah, but it's
yeah.
also like, look, it's for Google is getting closer and closer to what Google's understanding what humans want, and it's getting
Mm-hmm.
closer and closer to. It used to be, oh, we write for SEO, we write for humans, but it's getting so close now. Just write for humans,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, there's some stuff that someone can refine, but if you're doing this yourself and you're in the early stages, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. You're not going to rock it up, but at least you've got a load of stuff there that will help. And then you can share this stuff while you're not ranking. This is where social is great, because you said earlier, those questions and those answers, if you could do a reel per question, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what you can put on your social, or like whether it's a quote, graphic, or whatever, that's your social content. And so SEO and social can work together,
Mm-hmm.
because if someone's searching for these questions on Google, there'll be people on social that want to know the answer and be interested in that as
And they
well.
won't be actively searching those questions. They'll be sat on the sofa watching TV, scrolling and
Yeah,
thinking,
I didn't know
oh, well,
that.
what?
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Or I am wondering, can I get a mortgage with a year's account? And then Mike Smith pops up with answering that question. So that's really interesting. So we've covered we've covered authority, content, and then code, which is something
Code,
that you need
yes.
to get a developer involved, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the one thing I would say is I did a reel on this the other day myself, and I sort of compared it to like an F1 car. Like they did it, like Michael Schumacher didn't take a beautiful car, build the engine himself, and then say to the engineers, "Oh, could you optimize this?" They work together from the beginning. If you're going to get serious, I wouldn't work with an SEO person that's not built the website, because the website is SEO. The code is like 1/3 of the thing. Personally, I don't work with anyone else's code. It's never ended well. It would probably, because we build so many sites now, it's quicker for us to do it our way, in that way. So it loses me business because people are like, oh, I don't want to do my website again.
But you're
But
honest because you'd
yeah, but
rather
there's no point.
give them
There's
the
no point
best.
getting 6 months out. I mean, that's what's happened before. They've sort of said, "Oh, will you make an exception for?" And I've been like, "Yeah, okay, let's try it." And then it hasn't. It's never ended well.
No.
It's never ended well. So the code's got to be right. So, but also this is not going to it's not going to affect the authority too much. So if you can't afford to use someone, and you're doing everything else on Wix, that content can be copied over from Wix into your new website when you do take SEO seriously. That authority will build over time. So it's like, it just depends where you are in the journey. If you're right early in the minute, don't get too obsessed over it. If your budget is better spent elsewhere, don't. But we always use WordPress because it is open source and we can refine it, and there's tools that we can leverage. And there are things like you can do a Google speed test. Google tell you things to fix. So you could, if you've had
That's really useful, isn't it?
yeah, if you've had a custom website built, you could do the speed test and send it. But still, they could do all that work and then it not move. So if there's a cost associated with that, is it worth it at this point? If it only really, all these things are only really worth it when you've got the authority. So for me, my ideal client, I spoke to one yesterday, actually had a really high authority and they didn't know it, and they had a rubbish website. So I now can take that domain, because there's loads of authority in it, do the same process do for everyone else, and it'll work really quickly for them. But like a brand new site or a young site, I can't do that. I can show them what to do to get them ready. I suppose a bit like a broker with the people that aren't ready for a mortgage. There's things you can
very similar. And
get
the good
ready.
brokers will turn around and say, look, at the moment, it's probably not best. Go away and get another year's worth of books, and you'll be in a position where you can get a mortgage with a 5% deposit. And if anybody is listening to wants to have a chat with Alex or his team, it's you can hear from what he said, he had a client come to him and he actually advised him not to do anything right now because it's not beneficial.
Most of the time, that is the case.
But you could have easily taken somebody's money, and then 6 months down the line, you've got no results. Both of you are frustrated because you've not got the results you wanted, and they're not getting the results they're paying for. Whereas an honest conversation at the beginning would stop all that from happening, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've only been able to do that because we've done it and we've made the mistakes. So there are people that we took too early. We made the mistake and we learned from it, and we slowly like build up this criteria to work with. So, but yeah, no, I think there'll probably be people that are listening now that have had a sales call with me and I've said no to them. And I'm quite happy to speak to anyone. And I don't really like sales. So I did cringe when you were like, oh, does anyone want to speak to it? Because I don't want to make it a sales pitch. There is, as long as you're doing something and you might have to buy leads, and then because you need to survive and you've got to feed your family and everything. So I'm not going to have a go at anyone for buying leads. But if you're trying to put things in place to avoid that, and market your own business, then we'll do whatever we can to support you. And as you are doing with your podcast, trying to help people promote their business, so you can listen to our podcast for free. You don't need to spend money to get help.
Take all this information that's out there for free, because it puts you in very good stead. But we've been on for 45 minutes now, and I know we've covered loads in here. I know. Yeah.
I thought you'd be lucky if you only got me for 30 minutes.
No, that was fantastic. And we normally ask the strategy question where we say that you've moved north and you've got a laptop, mobile phone, and internet connection. What would you do? But we've talked about everything there. I think from the very beginning, it's building up domain authority if you can by trying to get featured in local national newspapers or getting featured in local ones. Google reviews is huge. Treat your Google My Business like you treat your whole business. So keep it updated, ask for reviews, update on socials there. And really just keep on top of the content with you and uploading posts on your website as blog post form. So those are 3 things that people can do. And it's not necessarily going to boost you into the stratosphere, but it will help over a sustained period of time, won't it, Alex?
Absolutely. There's that, like, it's that, because the quicker you start building authority through your website. So just having one. So that question, I think when you sent it to me, I was like, just setting up the website would be my first thing, and making sure I have one, even if I don't need it, even if it's not going to get me something immediately, and setting up my Google My Business to start getting reviews as quickly as possible.
Fantastic.
And I can't stop. I was going to say with the reviews, one last thing. So with the reviews, I would ask on offer, because that's when they're happy. They wouldn't wait till completion. And if there's joint applications, I would ask both partners, so you can double up. If you did 25 joint apps and all of them reviewed, both partners, you've got 50 Google reviews, which is pretty much the tipping point we find for getting really great quality through the site once you've got 50 plus reviews.
Fantastic. Alex, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on. As a thank you, we like to donate £10 to a charity of your choice. Which one would you like the donation to go to?
Yeah, so a little charity called Street Child United. So they do a homeless children's football World Cup when the
awesome.
men's football World Cup is on. So they did like Brazil and Russia and everything like that. And they've started doing like cricket as well. But what I loved about them was that they teach these homeless kids. So they've got no passport. Their country doesn't sort of want them to almost exist, but they can represent their country. And then they also get taught like public speaking, so they can lobby for their own rights, which is, I just thought was incredible. So it's like that connection. We're part of helping people who have got money get their dream house. But I think if there was like a charity that we can help, it's around that kind of homeless thing, because I always never know what to do when I see like a homeless person on the street. I feel like if I give them money, I just feel like I'm just unsure that's the right thing to do, which sounds really wrong to say. So I've always been conflicted about how to help like homeless. I also feel like if we are to give in this industry, that area is a great place. And I just love I'm into my sport and football as well, and just the things that they would do. It felt like they were doing things that will make a big difference for them. So that
fantastic. No, lovely idea. Lovely. I'll have a little look at them and we'll make the donation. Alex, thank you so much for coming on. Where can guys get in touch? Where can the guys listening get in touch with you, social wise?
Yes, I'm on mainly LinkedIn and Instagram. We did have a Facebook group for
stale.
We did have a Facebook group that we use loads. We're just sort of picking up again. But I think if you're like LinkedIn and Instagram, so you just like Alex Curtis on LinkedIn, and then I've tried to be clever with my social profile. So it's Insta Curtis, but it's INST.A Curtis.
Curtis.
But maybe LinkedIn, just find Alex Curtis will be.
Or the lead engine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Alex, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, mate. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers.